A homeless man came to the wedding, but when he took the microphone, something amazing happened. Jack awoke in a brightly lit hospital room, his body weighed down by pain, his mind an empty shell. The sterile air burned in his throat, and when he tried to speak, only a hoarse whisper escaped his lips. A nurse leaned over him, her smile reassuring, but her words sent a chill down his spine. He had been found on the side of the road, closer to death than life. His heart pounded as he asked the question that would change everything. Who am I? But no answer came. No documents, no memories, no family searching for him. Just a name on a hospital bracelet. Jack. A name that felt foreign, as if it didn't belong to him. Days passed, and while his body slowly healed, his mind remained trapped in darkness. He couldn't remember anything. No faces, no voices, no home. The doctors held little hope for a spontaneous return of his memories, and with no clues to his identity, there was no way to piece together his past. Eventually, he was discharged from the hospital with nothing but the clothes they had given him and a name that didn't feel like his own. Lost and without direction, he sat at a bus stop, watching the world pass by. An invisible man in a world that didn't recognize him. When the last bus of the evening pulled up, he boarded, not knowing where he was going or where he belonged. His journey ended at the final stop, but the questions in his mind remained. He wandered through the streets, searching for a sign, for a feeling of familiarity, but everything was foreign. That night he met Ray, an old man with a weathered face and tired eyes who studied him from the shadows. "Are you lost?" Ray asked, his voice carrying more understanding than pity. Jack nodded, and Ray offered him a simple solution. "Come with me. I know a place where you can sleep." It wasn't a home, just a cluster of tents in an abandoned alley, a refuge for society's forgotten. Jack had never imagined living like this, but at that moment he had no other choice. The people there welcomed him without asking about his past. They knew what it was like to lose something, and some of them had long stopped searching for answers. Jack was given a blanket, a meal, a moment of warmth. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel like a ghost in a world that had left him behind. But as he lay in the cold, listening to the distant sounds of the city, one question refused to let him rest. He couldn't remember his home, his family, or his friends. But there was one thing still lingering in his mind. A melody, a song he knew without knowing why. And maybe, just maybe, that song was the key to his past. Jack had grown accustomed to life on the streets. With Ray's help, he learned where to find food, how to keep warm, and which places were safe to sleep at night. "If you make yourself useful, people will take care of you," Ray had told him. Jack tried to accept his new reality, but deep inside, a restless feeling gnawed at him. It wasn't just the missing memories that haunted him. It was that one song, that melody that followed him as if it were the last fragment of his lost past. He didn't know where it came from, but it wouldn't let him go. One evening, as he wandered the streets with Ray, he heard street musicians playing in a park. The sound of a guitar made him freeze. Instinctively, he hummed the familiar melody, and before he knew it, the words slipped from his lips. The musicians fell silent. The people around him stopped in their tracks. Ray stared at him with wide eyes. When the song ended, the crowd erupted in applause, and then someone placed $1 at his feet, then another. Jack stared at the money, his heart pounding. It was the first time since the accident that he had earned something, through something he couldn't even remember learning. He could sing. From that moment on, Jack sang for money. He wrote a sign, "Request a song for $1." At first, he only performed familiar songs, but over time he discovered something incredible. He could play the guitar. After weeks of saving, he finally bought a second-hand guitar, and the moment he held it, his fingers instinctively found the right chords. His body remembered something his mind had forgotten. As time passed, he became a familiar face in the city, drawing larger and larger crowds. People stopped to listen, mesmerized by his voice. But even as he built a new existence, one question remained. Who had he been before it all began? Jack's life took an unexpected turn one evening when a stranger approached him after his performance. "You have an incredible voice," the man said. "Have you ever thought about performing at an event?" Jack laughed awkwardly, certain that no one would ever hire a homeless musician for a wedding or an elegant gathering. But the stranger shook his head and simply replied, "You'd be surprised." Jack didn't think much of the conversation, unaware that, miles away, someone was making a decision that would change his life forever. While Jack sang in the streets, a woman named Grace was preparing for the most important day of her life, her wedding. Everything was supposed to be perfect, until disaster struck. The live band she had booked was unable to make it due to a canceled flight. Grace was devastated. Music wasn't just a detail to her. She had hoped to hear her late father's favorite song on her special day. Her friends tried to console her by suggesting a simple playlist, but for Grace, it didn't feel right. She wanted magic, not a last-minute compromise. While she desperately searched for an alternative, her fiancé Michael was out celebrating his bachelor party, completely unaware that he was about to stumble upon the perfect solution to Grace's problem. As Michael and his friends walked through the city, a voice, raw with emotion, echoed through the night. A homeless musician sat on the sidewalk with an old guitar, surrounded by a small crowd. Michael stopped in his tracks, drawn to the melody. Without hesitation, he stepped forward. "Can you sing a wedding song?" he asked curiously. Jack hesitated, surprised by the request, but after a brief pause he began to play. And in that moment, Michael knew he had found exactly what he was looking for. "Would you be willing to sing at my wedding tomorrow?" Michael asked directly. Jack hesitated, unsure if he belonged in such a world, but there was no pity in Michael's eyes, only genuine appreciation. Finally, Jack took a deep breath and said, "All right, I'll do it." The next day, a sleek black car pulled up to Jack's usual spot. The driver, sent by Michael, took one look at Jack's worn-out clothes and made a spontaneous decision. Before heading to the wedding, he took Jack to a store and bought him a suit. For the first time in years, Jack wore clean, well-fitted clothes. As he looked at himself in the mirror, he felt a spark inside, a vague memory of a life he had lost. It felt right, as if he was finally becoming the man he once was. And for the first time in a long while, he felt like he belonged to something meaningful again. The wedding was in full swing when Michael took Grace aside, a knowing smile on his face. "I have a surprise for you," he said softly. Grace frowned in confusion, but before she could respond, the lights dimmed. A single spotlight illuminated the stage, and a man stepped into the glow. The guests exchanged puzzled glances as Grace studied the stranger. Who was he, and why was he singing at her wedding? But the moment Jack sang the first note, all conversations ceased. His deep, powerful voice filled the room, wrapping it in a magical atmosphere. Then, suddenly, like a bolt of lightning, recognition struck Grace. She knew this song. It was the same song her father used to sing to her as a child. Her heart pounded, and with trembling lips, she whispered a single word. "Dad?" The wedding guests froze. Michael looked at her in shock, but Grace heard nothing else. Tears welled up in her eyes as she slowly walked toward the man on stage. Jack's fingers slipped off the guitar strings. Something inside him shifted. A feeling, a memory. As he looked into Grace's face, not as a stranger, but as his daughter, everything came rushing back. The images of his family, the life he had lost, the accident. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered the one word he never thought he'd say again. "Grace?" She ran to him, throwing herself into his arms. And in that moment, a circle that had remained open for years finally closed. His family rushed to them, his wife, his son, embracing him as if he had never been gone. Jack, who had lived so long without a past, was suddenly reclaimed by it. But this time, it didn't mean pain. It meant coming home. He was no longer a man without a name, no longer a street musician without memories. He was a father, a husband, and finally, he was back where he belonged. Later that evening, as he sat in Grace's home, strumming his guitar and watching her children dance, he knew fate had led him home in the most unexpected way. Jack's journey was a story of loss, survival, and rediscovery. But now, I ask you, have you ever experienced a moment where fate brought you back to something you thought you had lost forever? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, leave a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another incredible story.